Hey guys, Bipolar Barbie here. Today I wanted to talk about a really important topic. This is my video on advice to parents. Now you might be thinking, oh, she doesn't have any kids. What advice should she possibly give to parents? Well, I honestly think advice from people like me is probably the best type of advice you could take on parenting. Yes, I was a child once who is now an adult who has a shit ton of issues because my parents fucked me up. And I think everyone's gonna fuck up their kids at some point. Like, it's inevitable. There are going to be moments that you are going to misparent, that you might make the wrong call. It happens. We're only human. We make mistakes. And that is okay. We don't expect you to be perfect. I never expected my parents to be perfect parents. But I think there were really simple ways in which they failed that I can communicate with you guys now, looking back on my life, getting to the bottom of why I am the way that I am now, how I got to this point. And, hope by kind of sharing them with other parents, they might be able to be a little bit more mindful in the way that they treat their children if they know the consequences of some of the things they might not realize that they're actually doing. Now, I have done my research as well. I have discussed this with a lot of people, a lot of specialists. And so it's not just like sort of my opinion, it's my personal experience related to actual psychology. I think the first thing, if you're a parent, like every parent wants to be a good parent, right? I get that. You know what? I want to be a good mom to my dog. I want to be a good person in general. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of attaching their self-worth to something. Something that might be of real significance, whether it be their partner or their work, success, whether it be their charity endeavors that they do, like whatever it is, people attach their self-worth to really external things. And as a parent, it's no different. If you're a parent, it's one of the most important jobs, the most important task you will have in your life, which is raising a human being. And you want to be good at it. You don't want to be a bad parent. God forbid you get labeled a bad parent. And even worse, when your kids are adults, they're turning to you and they're telling you that you've been a bad parent. I mean, the definition of good or bad, right or wrong, is really subjective anyway. And please, I guess, don't be afraid of being a bad parent, because you will be at some point. I think that was my parents' first issue. They were so afraid of being a bad parent. They wanted to be a good parent so badly. It actually made them a bad parent. And what I mean by that is sometimes the best parents are bad parents. If you accept that at some point you were going to be a bad parent, then you are opening yourself up to the possibility for improvement. And if you're not, if you are so afraid of those two words coming anywhere near you to describe you in any single way, then you were going to reject them. You are not going to analyze what you are doing with your children and looking for ways that you can improve your parenting style. And I think you can be a good and bad parent at the same time. The best parents are both. And it's not black or white. We need to stop, judging people as good or bad parents. Because again, it's subjective. What is good for one child might not be good for another child. And that was really apparent with me and my family. My parents had one parenting style. And I think that was their biggest issue. They thought they had the formula to raise good children and be a good parent. So they applied that formula, and when it didn't work for me, then it wasn't them, it was me. It was always my fault that their parenting style didn't work. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I think if they had been a little bit more open-minded, then they would have understood that that particular style didn't mean, that they were a bad parent. It just meant that I needed a different approach. And I think we're all different. All of your children are going to be different. If you have multiple children already, then you know that every single one of them has a different personality. They have different strengths. They have different weaknesses. And I hope that you are adjusting accordingly to your children. So here's some of my top tips for parents to really just be mindful of, because I don't think you will understand the consequences that these things will actually have on your children. You are shaping a person. You are molding them like you are molding a piece of clay. You are writing the code that they will use, that they will fall back on throughout their entire life. And one simple misstroke, one simple little tiny mistake repeated a few times can definitely have a lasting impact and influence every aspect of their life. So first of all, I want you guys to pay attention to the words that you speak to your children. I think we should all pay attention to the way that we speak to anyone, but do you realize the responsibility that you have as a parent? That you are teaching your children how to interact with the world. You are that first influence on them. And they are going to be paying attention to everything you do, and they're going to be copying everything you do. And if you don't want them to do something that you do, well, just the simple fact that you do it around them is really ingraining that pattern or that behavior, that thinking style, the way that you talk about yourself. I mean, I see a lot of, parents that will, like, for example, women. This is just one example. A woman doesn't feel comfortable about her body, her appearance. She's always making comments about the way that she dresses, about the things she doesn't like about her body. She is putting her own body image issues out there. Her daughter, who might not have any of the same attributes, who might be beautiful, who might be slim, who might just be completely different, will end up having the same body image issues simply because she has been taught by her mother, by accident, that that is the way that she should be looking at her own body. So just think about that the next time you're making a comment about your body, your appearance, what you think of yourself in front of your children. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be in front of them. Like, I can hear things from one end of the house to the other. I always knew when my parents were talking about me, and I would yell out, "Stop talking about me." And they'd yell back, "How can you hear us?" It's like, I can hear everything. I see everything. I know exactly what's going on. Like, you can't just go around the corner and close the door and think that, you're invisible and you're in a soundproof room. If that's what you want, like, build one. Egg cartons, I hear it's pretty easy. So yeah, be really mindful of the words that you speak and the way that you speak to your children. One thing that I really find my parents do, which is really, really harsh, is that whenever they criticize something that I do, whenever they have a comment, whether it be your room's messy. Okay, that's a statement. But what then follows is your room's messy, therefore you're lazy. You're dirty. You're disgusting. That then turns from like an observation into a personal attack. That is where you can do the most damage with your children. Creating these, ideas that someone who might have clothes all over the floor is then a terrible person. Someone who leaves their shoes on when they're in the house then becomes a terrible person. It's really kind of creating this framework, this maze of the things that define someone as a good or bad person. And that is really, really bad. This black or white thinking, this good or bad, this right or wrong, you know what? It's so subjective and it is not black or white. You want to give your kid borderline personality disorder? Then seriously, take that approach. There is no black or white. There is no good or bad people. Everybody is different. Everybody does good and bad things. Everybody does things that are wrong and right. But just because you do one wrong thing doesn't mean that there is something wrong with you. So please don't personalize that and don't make that kind of connection. Be really, really specific and try not to be so accusatory in your tone. It's really easy, I know, to be like, you've hurt me and you have made me upset. I think everyone in general just needs to change that and dial it down a little bit and go, okay, I feel upset because of what you have done. All of a sudden, the anger, the accusation is taken out of the equation and people will automatically get less defensive. I mean, there's no need to talk to your children like children. Like, you don't want to treat them like children. You want to treat them like adults because that's where you want to get to, right? That's what we all want to do, is raise successful adults. So please, give them choices. Reason with them. Explain things to them. My parents told me that the reason they couldn't love me is because I was a difficult child. And the reason they thought I was difficult is because I was a but why child. But why? But why? But why? They thought that was defiance. They thought I just did that for the hell of it. But no. I was a curious, intelligent child that I wanted to know things. And because I said so, this because I said so framework, when you are giving an order, when you are telling your child to do something, take the time to explain why it is that you are asking them to do it. Because they have a right to know. Like, really, do you want to raise a child that is told it's okay to do anything anybody tells you to simply because they tell you to do it? No. As a parent, you think it's your right to say, well, because I said so. Well, think about every single other person in the world. You are teaching your children that anyone else in the world has permission to tell them what to do without any form of explanation, even if it makes them feel uncomfortable. Just think about that for a second. Think of the implications that could have in their life with all sorts of types of people. You want your children to have a choice. You want them to feel like they have a choice. Sure, there are still some things that they need to do, but there are ways that you can go about it in a different way. I think simply sitting down with a child, if my parents had sat down with me and said, okay, well, the reason that we want you to do this is because, and explained it, I would have gone, okay, that makes sense. Even to the point, like, for example, like cleaning my room. I'm a messy person. I've always been a messy person. I've never been that good with chores. You want to know why? Because my parents never validated that. They had a negative to neutral validation range. And basically, there was an expectation. I was never told I did a good job if I did the dishes, things like that, because they thought that was expected. Granted, that might be something that you would expect from your child, and I'm not saying that that's outrageous, but I'm saying you should really encourage the behaviors that you want to see in your children. Your children doesn't have to do the dishes. I mean, you can force them to do it, but they are still doing something for you. And you should really appreciate that. You should at least say, thanks, I really appreciated you doing the dishes. You want to know why? Not because of them, but for you. If you tell them good job, children are seeking those good jobs. Well, all they want to hear from their parents is, am I a good person? Am I a good person? Did I do a good job? And if you make sure that you give them what they need, you give them that positive validation, positive reinforcement for the things that you want them to do, no matter how small it is, then that is how you will train self-sufficient, independent adults. And that is really the way that you need to go about it. Nothing, I guess, is expected. Everything that they are doing is going above and beyond kind of existing. So you really need to tell them what they should feel good about. So, for example, on the opposite approach, I was always quite messy. I think I'm an artist. I was always all over the place. But if I took the initiative to clean my room, that would immediately be met with, about time you did that. You're disgusting. You know, you need to clean your room. Like, why haven't you done it before? You're a piece of shit. It's like, well, now I do feel crappy about my room. Guess what? Suddenly, I feel so overwhelmed with disappointment, with guilt, with negativity, simply by the way that my parents responded to it. All of a sudden, I don't want to do my room anymore because it doesn't make me feel good. But if they had simply turned that around and gone, oh, good job, you finally done that. That's awesome. Guess what emotion that puts inside you? Like, how do you feel when someone tells you you've done a good job? You want to do more. You feel appreciated. You want to go out of your way to do that again and again and again. But when someone does the opposite and just reacts really negatively, then no, you're not going to want to keep doing it. People don't want to do things that make them feel bad. So please, don't make your children feel bad for doing things that they really actually need to learn how to do in life, even if it seems just a bit stupid at the time. The other thing is that you really need to reward a child's effort, not the outcome. See, I grew up in a world where the only type of validation I got was when I was achieving. Even, second place wasn't good enough. It was first or nothing. And lucky for me, I was good at a lot of things. I was pretty much always placing in anything I set my mind to. And I never did things that I didn't enjoy, things that I was bad at. But I was just lucky I was good at enough things that I could kind of get away with it. The trouble is I'd never worked hard a day in my life. I got all of this recognition, this praise, these awards, these good job, well done from so many different people simply for placing. Some people place really, really easily and they'll get recognition for that. Outside of school though, there's a lot less opportunities. You don't get an award for doing good at your job. You don't get an award for paying your rent. You don't get positive reinforcement for, paying your bills or, driving to work, like doing whatever it is. For me, when I got mentally ill, the hardest bit was that everything was suddenly hard. Everything was so hard all of a sudden, and I had no idea what to do because I'd never worked hard a day in my life, ever. And no one had ever rewarded me for the amount of effort that I was putting into something. And suddenly I was putting more effort into each day than I had ever put into my entire life combined. And again, I was criticized for it. So I think that's one thing that we really need to be mindful when we're, bringing our kids up. Because if you reward them for effort, regardless of the outcome, it's like, I know you got a C in your test, but I know that you worked really hard. Then they're gonna want to continue working hard. But if you criticize them for getting a C, despite how much effort they may have put in, like I know maybe, another child's gotten an A, but maybe it was easier for them. Maybe they didn't put in as much effort. Then suddenly that child with a C who really tried their hardest is not going to want to try anymore. Because when they do their best, they're simply told it's not good enough. That doesn't make you feel good. That doesn't make you want to keep trying. No. So I think we really do need to reward effort rather than results. So be mindful of that when your children are winning, when they're competing even. Like if they're not winning, but they've been training really hard, then you know what? Good job. Or every single time you see them doing their homework or, they go to soccer practice, whatever it is. Good job. I'm really proud of how hard you're working. Because I don't want to make them work harder. You've already rewarded them and you're basically telling them that, you know what? The outcome doesn't matter as long as you've done your best. And they're going to continue doing their best for the rest of their life. They are not going to have such an intense fear of failure like I had and be crippled with overwhelming feelings of inadequacy and severe anxiety simply because I'm worthless if I don't get an award, if I don't make an achievement, if I'm not doing great things with my life, then I'm not worth anything as a person. And I just want you to know that these are the types of things that will happen to your kids or would possibly happen to your children if you kind of do some of these behaviors. And I mean, if you can relate to them in any way, I think it's just, I just want you to be mindful. I'm not telling you what to do. Like, I don't know. Just think about the way that you parent and just be aware of like where things could really, really go. Because there's heaps of other things. Like, psychological abuse is so prevalent, and it's actually more detrimental and destructive and traumatic than sexual and physical abuse combined. But not many people know what it is. And it's not just the words that you speak, it's often what is not spoken. Things just like not giving your child their full attention, portray a message that you don't care about them, being preoccupied on your phone, being preoccupied cooking dinner. Like, if your child is following you around trying to get your attention, then you are really basically telling them, look, whatever I'm doing is more important to you. Putting the washing in the washing machine is more important than you. And I know that no parent would honestly go out of their way and want their child to feel this way. I just want you to know that you could be making your child feel this way. So if you don't want that, like, please be really, really careful. And I think another thing that is probably really bad that I think as a society we need to stop doing, and it starts as early on in childhood. With mental illness, people always say to you like, oh, well, you know, just think of all the other people that have it worse off than you. It's like, bam, you've just invalidated my pain. You have just basically told me that my pain is not significant. And you know what? There's no need to compare it. I mean, your pain and things that have happened to you in your life are all relative to the greatest pain that you have felt. Like, your body can't tell the difference in temperature, like temperature as a temperature number, but your body can tell a change in temperature. Oh, this is colder than what I felt before. Like, oh, it's suddenly gotten warm again. We can tell that change. And it's no different to pain and our emotional experience. The worst emotional experience for one person can be just like a good day for someone else. And that starts off like, this comparison is just, one, it makes people feel guilty. It feels like they're not allowed to have problems. And if they do have problems, well, they feel like a lesser person for it because, you know, they are thinking of everyone else that has it worse off and wondering why they can't just get their shit together. But have you ever been at the dinner table with your parents, or are you the parent that's at the dinner table telling your children when they don't want to finish their dinner to think of all the starving children in Africa, to think of all the kids that have it worse off than them that don't have food on the table? Well, there you go, guys. You have already started that comparison. That moment there, if you reinforce that, you know, even after a few meal times, if you're doing it every meal time, then you are basically teaching that generation and the future people of this world that we should be comparing ourselves to others. Not just our emotional pain, but in every other way. The amount of times that I would be compared to my sister, it would be like, oh, well, why couldn't you just do this? Your sister did that. I mean, in this day and age, we compare ourselves to others so much. And it's so hard when you do suffer a mental illness and, you know, on social media, you're sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself and you are comparing your life and your reality to someone else's highlight reel. You're comparing it to reality TV shows. You're comparing it to the world that you see in others. And we need people to know that we're all unique and you cannot compare two people, that everyone is very different. You need to let your kids know that life is not a race. It's a journey. Success is not a destination. It is a mindset. You need to tell them that it is okay to not be okay. How many of you find, you know, yourself saying to your children, oh, don't cry, don't cry. Or when they're angry, don't be angry, stop being angry. Like all of these emotions, like showing emotion, showing anything else but happiness is a bad thing. It's not. We have a full spectrum of human emotions because it allows us to navigate our world. How we feel about something really influences the way in which we react to something. And criticizing our children, calling them out, for example, because they might be confused. Like, confusion has this really weird negative connotation. It's like, if you're confused, you're stupid. You know what? The reason we get confused is because we don't know something. And we're about to learn something new. So being confused is actually a really good thing, if you look at it that way. But if we keep going around telling people that being confused is a bad thing and being confused means that you're stupid, then we're not going to want to learn anything new, because we're not going to want to admit that we're confused. It's very, very simple little things like this that I think everyone in society needs to really be aware of. But parents, you have one of the most important jobs, and that is to raise future people. And you are raising them. And their emotional and psychological health is no less important to their physical health. In fact, it's probably more important, because someone's inner well-being really determines their outer well-being. Their childhood experience will affect them for the rest of their life. Studies have shown that children who have gone through some form of childhood trauma, it actually changes their physical makeup and composition. So they are more likely to have eating disorders, obesity, drug and alcohol addiction, diabetes, heart disease. There is a whole range of things that can affect people simply from the way in which their parents spoke to them, interacted with them, or treated them. And a lot of these things I think that I have mentioned today are things that people just don't think about. And I think that's sad. And I really hope you don't get offended by this video. These are things that I've been trying to communicate with my parents for years, and they're just not open to it. Which is fine. But I don't mean any blame. I don't mean any accusations. The only reason I say any of this is because I don't want any young child to feel the way that I felt. And I don't want anyone to have to grow up the way that I did and live with the challenges and the issues that I now have to live with. I'm determined to overcoming them, but you know what? It would have been a hell of a lot easier if I didn't have to in the first place. Because it's been really, really tough. And I know no parent would deliberately do this to their children. I just want you to know that you could be. So you really just need to be a bit more aware. Be careful in your word choice. Be really careful in your behavior, and know that you are often sending subliminal messages that you probably don't want to be sending. Someone will, I guess, forget often the things that you did to them, maybe even the things that you say to them, but no one will ever forget the way that you made them feel. So that is what is most important. The way that you make your children feel. So thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Any tips you have on parenting? Were you messed up by a parent? I think we all were. You often don't realize that until later in life, and you're looking back and you're like, oh wow, I thought that was normal. Guess not. So yeah, I'm like that. It's like I tell stories about my childhood and then people just seem really shocked. They're like, oh my god, are you okay? It's like, what do you mean? That's normal. Like, isn't everyone like that? Shit happens. That's life.